Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the mining laser's settings. The asteroid belt around Kepler 442 was supposed to be empty of life, just rocks and valuable minerals waiting to be harvested. That's what the survey reports had said anyway. But survey reports were often wrong, and Marcus had learned not to trust them completely during his 15 years as an independent miner. The small mining ship Lucky Strike hummed quietly as it drifted between two massive asteroids. Marcus had been working this belt for 3 weeks now, and his cargo hold was nearly full of rare earth elements. Just a few more days and he could head back to the trading station, with enough credits to keep him comfortable for months. He was preparing to fire up the laser again when his proximity sensors started beeping frantically. Marcus frowned and checked the display. Something was moving out there, something that wasn't supposed to be moving. Asteroids didn't change course on their own. Computer, scan for life signs in Grid 77 Alpha, Marcus commanded. The ship's AI responded in its usual calm voice. Scanning. Life signs detected, weak biological signatures, unknown species. Marcus's hands froze over the controls. Life signs out here. The closest inhabited world was 3 star systems away. He pulled up the visual display and enhanced the image. What he saw made his blood run cold. Floating between 2 smaller asteroids was what looked like an escape pod, but unlike any design he'd ever seen. It was sleek and organic looking, almost like it had been grown rather than built. Parts of its surface were cracked and scorched, and it was spinning slowly, clearly out of control. Computer, any distress signals? Negative. The craft appears to be broadcasting on unknown frequencies. Translation protocols are unable to process the signals. Marcus stared at the damaged pod for a long moment. Every instinct told him to stay away. First contact situations were supposed to be handled by trained diplomats and scientists, not lone miners. But whoever was in that pod was dying. The life signs were getting weaker by the minute. He thought about his daughter Sarah back on Earth. She was studying xenobiology at the university, always talking about how amazing it would be to meet alien life. What would she think if she knew her father had the chance to save an alien life and chose to walk away? Computer, prepare the rescue bay. We're bringing that pod aboard. Warning: unknown technology may pose contamination risks. Recommend maintaining safe distance and contacting authorities. Override warning: someone's dying out there. Marcus maneuvered the Lucky Strike closer to the spinning pod. Using the ship's mechanical arms was tricky work under the best circumstances, and this pod was damaged and unpredictable. It took him 20 minutes of careful work to grab it and guide it into the rescue bay. Once the bay was sealed and pressurized, Marcus suited up and went to investigate. The pod was even stranger up close. Its surface felt warm to the touch, and there were symbols carved into it that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. Finding the opening took another 10 minutes. When he finally managed to activate what he assumed was the release mechanism, the pod split open like a flower blooming. Inside was something that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. She was definitely female, though clearly not human. Her skin was a pale blue-green color that seemed to shimmer in the rescue bay's lights. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with delicate features and long silver hair that moved as if it were underwater. But what struck Marcus most were her injuries. Deep gashes covered her arms and torso, bleeding a silver-blue liquid that had to be blood. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, and her skin had a gray pallor that spoke of serious blood loss. Worse, there were burn marks on her neck and wrists that looked deliberately inflicted. Jesus, Marcus whispered. What did they do to you? He carefully lifted her from the pod and carried her to the ship's small medical bay. The Lucky Strike wasn't equipped for major surgery, but Marcus had learned basic medical skills during his mining years. Accidents happened in space, and help was often days away. As he worked to clean and bandage her wounds, Marcus noticed more details. Her hands had 4 fingers instead of 5, each ending in what looked like small claws. Her feet were similar, clearly adapted for gripping. Most surprising were the small gills behind her ears, currently sealed shut. An aquatic species, Marcus murmured as he worked. But what's she doing out here in the middle of nowhere? The alien girl stirred as he finished bandaging the worst of her injuries. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that were a deep violet color. For a moment she stared at him in confusion. Then fear flooded her features and she tried to scramble away from him. Hey, it's okay, Marcus said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. I'm trying to help you. She didn't understand his words, but something in his tone seemed to calm her slightly. She stopped trying to escape but remained pressed against the far wall of the medical bay, watching him with those incredible violet eyes. Marcus pointed to himself. "Marcus," he said clearly. Then he pointed to her with a questioning expression. The alien girl tilted her head, studying him. When she spoke, her voice was like music, but the words were completely foreign. She seemed to realize he didn't understand because she pointed to herself and spoke a single word that sounded like, "Zara." "Zara," Marcus repeated, and she nodded. It was a start. Now he just had to figure out what had happened to her and what he was going to do about it, because one thing was clear from her injuries and the terror in her eyes. Zara hadn't ended up in that damaged pod by accident. Someone had hurt her badly and left her to die in the cold vacuum of space, and that made Marcus very angry indeed. Marcus had seen fear before, but nothing quite like what he saw in Zara's violet eyes. It wasn't just the normal fear of a wounded person facing a stranger. This was deeper, the kind of terror that came from expecting the worst from every encounter. It broke his heart. He moved slowly and deliberately, keeping his hands visible at all times. From his emergency supplies, he pulled out a nutrition bar and held it up where she could see it. He took a small bite himself, then offered it to her. Zara stared at the bar suspiciously for a long moment. Her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, a sound that was surprisingly similar to human hunger. Despite her fear, she was clearly starving. Tentatively, she reached out and took the bar. She sniffed it carefully before taking a tiny bite. Her face scrunched up at the taste, but she continued eating. Marcus made a mental note that human food probably wasn't ideal for her, but it would have to do for now. While she ate, Marcus studied her more carefully. The gills behind her ears were definitely closed, but he could see them flutter slightly with each breath. Her skin had a slight iridescent quality that reminded him of fish scales, though it appeared smooth to the touch. Most concerning were those burn marks around her neck and wrists. They looked like restraint marks. "Computer," Marcus said quietly. "Scan our guest for any unknown pathogens or biological hazards." Scanning complete. No pathogenic organisms detected. Subject appears to be carbon-based with similar biological markers to humans. No immediate health threats to crew. That was a relief. Marcus pulled up the ship's translation software on a portable tablet. It was designed primarily for human languages, but it had learning algorithms that might be able to help. He sat down across from Zara, keeping some distance to avoid making her feel trapped. The tablet displayed a simple image of water, and Marcus pointed to it, then made drinking motions. Zara's eyes widened with recognition. She spoke a word that sounded like "aqueal" and nodded enthusiastically. Marcus tapped the tablet and it recorded the word, associating it with the image of water. They spent the next hour building a basic vocabulary. Marcus would show her images or point to objects, and Zara would provide the words in her language. She was incredibly intelligent, quickly understanding what he was trying to do and even starting to repeat human words back to him. "Hand," Marcus said, holding up his hand. "Hand," Zara repeated carefully, her accent giving the word a musical quality. She held up her own four-fingered hand and said what sounded like "Velith." Marcus typed both words into the tablet. The translation program was slowly building a database, though it would take much longer to understand grammar and complex concepts. As they worked, Marcus noticed that Zara seemed to be recovering faster than should have been possible. The worst of her wounds had stopped bleeding entirely, and some of the smaller cuts looked like they were actually healing. Either her species had remarkable regenerative abilities, or there was something about the medical supplies he'd used that agreed with her biology. The real breakthrough came when Marcus showed her a picture of a star map. Zara became extremely animated, pointing at specific areas and speaking rapidly in her musical language. She seemed to be trying to tell him something important about locations in space. Marcus pulled up the navigation charts for this sector of the galaxy. When Zara saw the familiar interface, she pointed excitedly at a star system about 4 light-years away. Then her expression darkened and she made a slashing motion across her throat. "Danger?" Marcus asked, and pantomimed fear. Zara nodded vigorously. She pointed to herself, then to the star system, then made the throat-cutting gesture again. Whatever had happened to her had come from that direction. She then pointed to several other star systems and repeated the danger gesture. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If he was understanding correctly, something dangerous was operating across multiple star systems and Zara had been a victim. Marcus tried a different approach. He pulled up an image of a human family, a man, woman, and child together. He pointed to the child, then to Zara, trying to ask if she had family. The reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. Zara's face crumpled and she began to weep. The sound was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, a keening wail that seemed to echo in harmonics. Tears the color of starlight rolled down her cheeks. She pointed to the family image, then to herself, then made a gesture that could only mean gone or dead. Her entire family was dead. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. Someone had killed this girl's family, tortured her and left her to die alone in space. He'd seen a lot of cruelty in his years among the stars, but this felt personal somehow. Without thinking, he moved closer and gently placed his hand over hers. Zara flinched at first, but when Marcus didn't try to grab or restrain her, she allowed the contact. Her skin was surprisingly warm and felt almost electric to the touch. "I'm sorry," Marcus said softly, knowing she couldn't understand the words but hoping she could understand the emotion behind them. Zara looked up at him with those incredible violet eyes. Slowly, she spoke a single word. "Marcus." Then she placed her other hand over his and said something in her own language that sounded like a thank you. For the first time since he'd found her, Zara smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it transformed her entire face. Marcus realized that despite everything she'd been through, despite the fear and loss and pain, there was strength in this young alien that reminded him of the best qualities he'd seen in humans. As if reading his thoughts, Zara pointed to the star chart again. But this time, instead of indicating danger, she pointed to Earth's location. She'd somehow figured out where he was from. Then she looked at him directly and spoke several words in her language with great emphasis. Marcus didn't need a translation to understand the basic meaning. She was asking for his help, and looking at this brave, damaged girl who had somehow survived the unthinkable, Marcus knew there was only one answer he could give. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'll help you." Even without understanding the words, Zara seemed to know what he meant. For the first time since he'd found her, the fear in her eyes was replaced by something else: hope. Over the next 2 days, Marcus watched Zara transform from a terrified refugee into something approaching her natural self. Her wounds healed with remarkable speed, leaving only faint silver lines where the worst cuts had been. More importantly, the constant fear in her eyes began to fade as she realized Marcus truly meant her no harm. The translation program had grown significantly. Zara was a quick learner and seemed to understand the importance of communication. She would often grab the tablet and try to express complex ideas using the limited vocabulary they'd built together. Marcus had converted his small recreation room into a more comfortable space for her. He'd noticed that she seemed more relaxed when surrounded by blue and green colors, so he'd adjusted the lighting accordingly. He'd also discovered that she was indeed an aquatic species, when he found her sitting in the shower with the water running over her gills, looking more peaceful than he'd ever seen her. "Marcus," Zara said, startling him from his thoughts. Her pronunciation of human words was improving daily. She held up the tablet, which displayed a crude drawing she'd made using her finger. It showed stick figures that looked like her people, and larger, more angular figures that were clearly different species. "Your people," Marcus said, pointing to the smaller figures. "And them?" He pointed to the larger ones. Zara's expression darkened. She spoke a word that the tablet had learned to translate as hunters. Then she made a series of gestures that painted a horrifying picture. The hunters came from the outer reaches of the galaxy. They captured intelligent species, enslaved them, harvested them. Marcus felt sick. "They took your people?" "Yes," Zara said, one of the human words she'd mastered. She pointed to herself and spoke in halting English mixed with her own language. "Escape, family. Gone, all gone." She pulled up the star chart and showed him the pattern again. System after system had been hit by these hunters. Entire civilizations had been wiped out or enslaved. And they were moving inward, toward the more populated regions of the galaxy, toward Earth. "How many hunters?" Marcus asked. Zara held up both hands, then again, at least 30, possibly more. She drew shapes on the tablet showing massive ships, each one capable of devastating a planet's defenses. Marcus stared at the information, trying to process it. This was bigger than anything he could handle alone. This needed to reach the authorities, the military. someone with the power to mount a defense. But first, he needed to know more. "Can you show me one of their ships?" Marcus asked. Zara nodded and began working on the tablet. What she drew made Marcus's blood run cold. The hunter ships were organic-looking, like her escape pod but massive. They were covered in what looked like weapons, and there were smaller ships attached to them like parasites. "How did you escape?" Marcus asked gently. Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she finally answered, her voice was barely a whisper. She told him in a mixture of languages and gestures about being held in a prison ship, about watching her family and friends die, about a desperate plan that should have failed. She'd been selected for something the hunters called processing, a fate that seemed to terrify her more than death. While being transported to the processing facility, her ship had been attacked by another group of aliens who were fighting back against the hunters. In the chaos, her prison transport had been damaged. Zara had managed to get to an escape pod, but not before seeing most of the other prisoners killed in the crossfire. She'd drifted for weeks before Marcus found her, slowly dying as her pod's systems failed. "You were brave," Marcus said firmly. Zara shook her head. "Not brave, lucky. Both," Marcus insisted. He'd learned enough about her species to know that attempting such an escape would have taken enormous courage. "Your people, are there others? Survivors?" Zara's expression grew hopeful for the first time. She nodded and pointed to several star systems on the chart. There were refugee populations hiding throughout the galaxy, remnants of civilizations that had managed to escape the hunters' initial attacks. But they were scattered, frightened, and had no way to organize a resistance. That gave Marcus an idea. "What if we brought them together?" Zara tilted her head, not understanding. Marcus pulled up information about human history on the tablet. He showed her images of World War II, of scattered resistance groups that had eventually united to fight back against overwhelming odds. "Humans did this," Marcus explained. "When a great evil threatened us, we came together. Different nations, different peoples, all fighting for the same thing." Zara studied the images intently. "Humans fight together?" "When we have to," Marcus said. "We're not perfect, but when something threatens innocent people, we don't run. We fight." Something sparked in Zara's violet eyes. "You fight for others? Not just your own people?" "The good ones do," Marcus said. "We have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." Zara was quiet for a long time, processing this. Finally she spoke. "Marcus, your people, they would fight the hunters?" Marcus thought about Earth's military capabilities, about humanity's long history of facing impossible odds and somehow finding a way to win. If they knew about the threat, if they understood what was coming, yes, they would fight, even for aliens. Marcus looked at this brave young woman who had survived horrors he could barely imagine, who still worried about others despite her own trauma, especially for people like you. Zara smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from her. "Then we go to Earth?" Marcus nodded. "We go to Earth, but first we need to contact those other survivors you mentioned. If we're going to convince my people to fight, we need to show them exactly what we're up against, and we need allies." Zara worked on the tablet for several minutes, bringing up stellar coordinates and communication frequencies. "I know where some hide." "But Marcus," she looked at him seriously. "Hunters have ships that track faster than light travel. If we go to these places, we bring danger. Then we'll have to be smart about it," Marcus said. "Humans are good at being sneaky when we need to be." Zara laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing. "Sneaky? We'll be very careful," Marcus clarified. "We'll plan everything perfectly." As they began plotting their course to the first refugee hideout, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose larger than himself. He'd spent his life mining rocks and avoiding trouble. Now he was planning to help organize a galactic resistance movement. It should have terrified him. Instead, he found himself looking forward to the challenge. Because if there was one thing humans were truly excellent at, it was refusing to give up when the stakes were highest. And the stakes had never been higher than this. The first refugee camp was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid in an abandoned system. Marcus had to admit that whoever had chosen the location was clever. The asteroid's mineral composition made it nearly invisible to most scanning technologies. If Zara hadn't known exactly where to look, they never would have found it. "Remember," Marcus said as they approached in the lucky strike, Let me do the talking first. Your people might not trust a human initially. Zara nodded, though Marcus could see the excitement in her eyes. These were the first members of her species she would see since her escape. The translation software had improved enough that they could have real conversations now. And Marcus had learned that Zara's people were called the Aquari. The hidden docking bay opened only after Zara transmitted a complex series of musical tones, a password that changed according to tidal patterns on their homeworld. Even in exile, the Aquari maintained their connection to the ocean. Marcus was surprised by what they found inside the asteroid. Instead of a simple refugee camp, the Aquari had built something approaching a small city. Gardens of bioluminescent plants provided light and food, while artificial streams flowed through carefully designed channels. The air was humid and carried the faint scent of seawater, but what struck Marcus most was how few Aquari there were. He'd expected hundreds, maybe thousands. Instead, he counted perhaps 50 individuals moving through the corridors, and many of those were elderly or injured. Zara was immediately surrounded by her people, all speaking at once in their musical language. There were tears and joyful embraces, but also looks of deep sadness. Marcus waited patiently, understanding that this reunion was more important than anything else right now. Finally, an elderly Aquari approached him. She was taller than Zara, with silver hair that held streaks of deep blue. Her scales were more pronounced, and there was an air of authority about her that marked her as a leader. "I am Elder Thissa," she said in accented but clear English. "Zara tells us you saved her life." "I did what anyone should do," Marcus replied. "She needed help." Thissa studied him carefully. "Not anyone would risk their ship for a stranger. Not anyone would spend weeks learning our language. You are either very foolish or very kind." "Maybe both," Marcus admitted. That earned him what might have been a smile. "Zara says you wish to fight the Devourers, that you believe your people will help us." "The Devourers?" "What you call the Hunters," Thissa explained. "They consume everything, worlds, cultures, lives. They leave nothing behind but emptiness." Thissa led Marcus through the asteroid colony, showing him the full scope of what they faced. The Aquari here were refugees from 17 different worlds. Some had escaped when their planets were first attacked. Others had been rescued from Devourer ships by resistance fighters. All had the same haunted look in their eyes that Marcus had first seen in Zara. "How many Aquari are left?" Marcus asked quietly. "Perhaps 10,000 scattered across the galaxy," Thissa said. "Once we numbered in the billions." The enormity of the genocide hit Marcus like a physical blow. An entire species nearly wiped out, and the Devourers were still coming. "Show me what we're fighting," Marcus said. Thissa led him to a central chamber where holographic displays showed everything the refugees had learned about their enemy. The Devourers weren't just raiders. They were a coordinated force with technology that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements. "Their ships grow rather than being built," Thissa explained. "They harvest the life force of planets to fuel their expansion. A Devourer ship that consumes a thriving world can split into 2 ships, each capable of consuming another world." Marcus studied the tactical displays. The Devourers used a pattern of attack that was brutally efficient. They would send scouts to identify populated worlds, then arrive in force before the local defenders could organize a response. Most worlds fell within days. "How do we fight something like that?" Marcus asked. "We don't," said a new voice. Marcus turned to see a tall crystalline being entering the chamber. "I am Christor of the Lithans. My people have been fighting the Devourers for longer than most. We have learned that victory is impossible." "But you're still fighting," Marcus pointed out. "We delay them. We save who we can. But we cannot stop them." Christor's rocky features somehow managed to convey deep weariness. "Every battle costs us more than we can afford to lose." Marcus was introduced to representatives of 6 different species, all refugees, all survivors of Devourer attacks. There were the crystalline Lithans, the energy-based Volari, the insectoid Chitauri, and others. Each species had different technologies and capabilities, but none had been able to mount an effective defense against the Devourers. "What if you worked together?" Marcus asked. "Combined your technologies, coordinated your efforts?" "We have tried," Christor said. "But we are too few, too scattered, and the Devourers always seem to know where we are." That caught Marcus's attention. "They track you. Their ships can follow faster than light signatures," Thissa explained. "Any ship that uses standard FTL drives leaves a trail they can follow." Marcus thought about that. What about non-standard drives? Most species use quantum tunnel drives, Christor said. The Devourers have learned to track all known FTL technologies, but not unknown ones, Marcus said slowly. Earth uses Alcubierre drives. They warp space around the ship instead of tunneling through it. Would that leave a different signature? The refugees looked at each other uncertainly. We do not know, Thissa admitted. We have never encountered this technology. Marcus pulled up the technical specifications for human FTL drives on his tablet. The alien scientists gathered around, studying the data with growing excitement. This could work, Christor said finally. If your drives truly leave no tunnel signature, the Devourers would not be able to track you. More than that, added a Volari named Spark, her energy form flickering with excitement. If you could retrofit our ships with these drives, we could move without being detected. We could coordinate attacks. For the first time since arriving at the asteroid, Marcus saw hope in the refugees' eyes. How long would it take to modify your ships? Weeks, perhaps months, Christor said. But it would require raw materials we do not have, and technical expertise that would be difficult to acquire. Earth has both, Marcus said. And if I explain the situation correctly, they'll provide whatever you need. Thissa placed a webbed hand on Marcus's shoulder. You truly believe your people will fight for strangers? Marcus thought about humanity's history, about all the times humans had stood up against impossible odds to protect others. I believe they'll fight for what's right. And this is definitely right. Zara approached the group, having finished her reunions with the other Aquari. Marcus, there is something else. The Elders have information about the Devourer's next target. She activated a new holographic display showing a densely populated sector of space. Marcus's blood ran cold as he recognized the stellar formations. When? He asked. Soon, Thissa said grimly. Perhaps 6 months. They are gathering their forces for a major assault. Marcus stared at the display, calculating distances and travel times. With traditional FTL, it would take him 3 months to reach Earth. But if the Devourers moved faster than expected, we need to leave now, Marcus said, and we need to move faster than anyone thought possible. Zara looked at him with concern. Marcus, what is it? Marcus pointed to the star in the center of the targeted sector. A yellow star with 8 planets, the third of which was covered in blue oceans and green continents. They're heading for Earth. Marcus pushed the Lucky Strike's engines harder than he'd ever dared, but it still wasn't enough. Even at maximum speed, they were looking at 3 months to reach Earth. The refugees' intelligence suggested the Devourers would arrive in 6 months, but Marcus had learned not to trust enemy timetables. The assault could come earlier. Marcus, you're going to burn out the drive core if you keep this up, Zara said, monitoring the engine readings. Her technical skills had improved dramatically during their journey, and she'd become invaluable as a co-pilot. Then we'll find another ship, Marcus replied grimly. We can't be late. They'd left the refugee asteroid with more than just warnings. Christor had provided them with detailed technical specifications for Devourer ships, while Spark had given them energy weapon designs that might actually damage the alien vessels. Most importantly, Elder Thissa had entrusted them with communication codes that would allow Earth to contact other refugee groups across the galaxy. But first they had to get there, alive. The Devourers weren't their only problem. 3 days out from the asteroid, Marcus had detected pursuit. 2 ships were following them, staying just at the edge of sensor range. They weren't Devourer vessels. Those were larger and had a distinctive organic signature. These ships were sleeker, more technological in design. Bounty hunters, Zara explained when Marcus showed her the sensor readings. Many species pay well for information about refugee locations. Others sell prisoners directly to the Devourers. Marcus felt disgust rise in his throat. They work with those monsters? Greed makes some beings do terrible things, Zara said sadly. My people learned this the hard way. The bounty hunters were gaining on them. Their ships were faster than the Lucky Strike, and they seemed to know exactly where Marcus was heading. Eventually they would catch up. We need to lose them, Marcus said. Any ideas? Zara studied the star charts. There, she pointed to a system marked with warning symbols. The Maelstrom Nebula. The electromagnetic storms make sensors useless, but they also make navigation deadly. Marcus looked at the nebula readings. The energy fluctuations were enormous, capable of frying unshielded electronics or tearing apart ships that got caught in the worst storms. You're suggesting we fly through that? The bounty hunters won't follow us, Zara said. They're not desperate enough to risk it. And we are. Zara met his eyes. Your entire species is at stake, Marcus. Yes, we are desperate enough. Marcus nodded and changed course toward the nebula. Behind them, the bounty hunters accelerated, realizing their quarry was about to escape into space they couldn't follow. The first energy wave hit them as they entered the nebula's outer edge. Every system on the ship flickered, and Marcus had to grip the controls as the Lucky Strike was buffeted by invisible forces. Shields at 60%, Zara reported. Hull temperature rising. Marcus had piloted through asteroid fields, solar storms, and gravitational anomalies, but the Maelstrom Nebula was unlike anything he'd experienced. The space around them crackled with energy discharges that lit up the cosmic dust in brilliant displays of color. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Navigation sensors are offline, Zara said. I can't tell where we are. Marcus switched to manual piloting, relying on instinct and experience to navigate through the chaos. Hours passed as they crawled through the nebula, dodging energy storms and avoiding regions where the electromagnetic interference was strong enough to cook them alive. Marcus, Zara said quietly, I want you to know, if we don't make it through this, I'm grateful for everything you've done. You've shown me that there are still good people in the universe. We're going to make it, Marcus said firmly, because giving up isn't an option. That's when they discovered they weren't alone in the nebula. Ship signatures ahead, Zara announced, somehow managing to get partial sensor readings. 3 vessels, configuration unknown. Marcus slowed their approach. Through the swirling energy clouds, he could make out 3 ships unlike anything he'd seen before. They were clearly damaged, drifting without power, but their design suggested advanced technology. They're Forerunner ships, Zara whispered with awe. Forerunners, an ancient race that disappeared thousands of years ago. They were said to have technology beyond anything that exists today. Zara's voice grew excited. Marcus, if even one of those ships still has functional systems. Marcus understood immediately. Forerunner technology could be the key to stopping the Devourers. But approaching the derelict ships meant entering the most dangerous part of the nebula. Shields are down to 30%, Zara warned. If we get caught in another energy storm, then we better be fast, Marcus said, and gunned the engines toward the nearest Forerunner vessel. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Lucky Strike. Its hull was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched, and there were energy patterns running through its structure that suggested it wasn't as dead as it appeared. Marcus found a docking bay that looked compatible with their ship. As the Lucky Strike settled into the alien docking clamps, both he and Zara held their breath. But the ancient mechanisms worked perfectly, sealing them inside and pressurizing the bay. Breathable atmosphere, Zara reported. Temperature within normal range. It's like the ship is still alive. They suited up anyway and ventured into the Forerunner vessel. The corridors were vast and elegant, with walls that glowed softly with their own internal light. Everything was sized for beings roughly human-sized, which Marcus found oddly comforting. Look at this, Zara called from ahead. She was standing before a wall covered in what looked like a star map, but far more detailed than anything they'd seen before. It shows the entire galaxy, Marcus. And look, these red dots. Marcus joined her and felt his heart sink. The red dots covered nearly a quarter of the galaxy, all in regions where they knew the Devourers had struck. But more concerning were the projection lines showing the invasion's next phase. They're not just heading for Earth, Marcus realized. Earth is just one target in a massive assault. They're planning to attack 50 systems simultaneously. Zara pointed to other sections of the map. But look here. The Forerunners marked something. Strategic points, maybe weapons or defensive systems. One of the marked points was only 2 weeks' travel from Earth. If they could reach it and find whatever the Forerunners had left behind. Marcus, this changes everything, Zara said. With Forerunner technology, your people might actually have a chance. Marcus studied the map, memorizing the coordinates. Then we need to get to Earth faster than ever. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. He led Zara deeper into the ship until they found what he was looking for, the Forerunner engine core. It was unlike anything in human technology, a crystalline structure that pulsed with contained energy. If we could interface this with our drives, Marcus began. That's incredibly dangerous, Zara interrupted. If the energy patterns don't match, it could destroy both ships. But if it works, we could reach Earth in days instead of months. Zara looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. You know, for a species that claims to be cautious, humans take the most amazing risks. Working together, they spent the next 6 hours carefully connecting the Forerunner power core to the Lucky Strike's drive system. It required modifications that pushed both their technical skills to the limit, but finally the exotic energies began flowing through human-built conduits. When Marcus engaged the hybrid drive system, the Lucky Strike leaped forward at speeds that should have been impossible. Space seemed to fold around them, and the journey that should have taken weeks was compressed into mere days. As Earth grew larger on their view screen, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and determination. They'd made it. Now came the harder part, convincing humanity that an impossible threat was coming, and that their survival depended on making allies they'd never imagined. Welcome to Earth, Marcus said to Zara, as they approached the blue and green world. It's beautiful, Zara said softly. I hope we can save it. We will, Marcus said with absolute certainty. Because that's what humans do. The conference room in Geneva was packed with representatives from every major nation on Earth, plus military commanders, scientists, and intelligence officials. Marcus had expected skepticism, but he hadn't been prepared for the sheer amount of bureaucratic resistance to his warning. Mr. Chen, said the Secretary General of the United Nations, you're asking us to believe that hostile aliens are planning to invade not just Earth, but 50 star systems simultaneously, based on the word of a single refugee. Not just her word, Marcus replied, trying to keep his frustration under control. I've shown you the Forerunner star maps, the technical specifications of Devourer ships, the refugee testimony from 6 different species, computer simulations and fabricated evidence, interrupted General Harrison from the American delegation. For all we know, this is an elaborate first contact, scenario designed to make us expose our military capabilities. Marcus looked around the room and saw the same expression on dozens of faces, polite disbelief. Mixed with political calculation, they thought this was some kind of trick or test. Admiral Chen, came a voice from the back of the room. Marcus turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen, his daughter, stepping forward. She wore the uniform of the United Earth Space Command, and her expression was carefully neutral. Sarah, Marcus said, surprised to see her there. Admiral Chen has studied your evidence extensively, the Secretary General said. Perhaps you could share your analysis with us. Sarah activated a holographic display that showed detailed technical readouts. The alien technology described in these reports is beyond anything in our current understanding. The energy signatures, the material science, the propulsion systems. Either this is genuine alien technology, or someone has spent decades developing the most elaborate hoax in human history. But is it a threat? Asked the Chinese representative. Sarah's expression grew grim. If these devourers exist as described, they represent an extinction-level threat not just to Earth, but to intelligent life throughout the galaxy. Their technology is so far beyond ours that a direct confrontation would be suicide. Marcus felt his heart sink. If his own daughter, a career military officer and xenobiology expert, was saying the threat was too great. However, Sarah continued, the refugee technology offers possibilities. The Alcubierre drive modifications suggested by the alien refugees could give us tactical advantages. And if the Forerunner installations marked on these maps are real and functional, they might provide the edge we need. You're suggesting we trust our planet's defense to ancient alien artifacts? General Harrison said skeptically. I'm suggesting we investigate every possible option, Sarah replied firmly. Because if Mr. Chen is right about the timeline, we have less than 5 months to prepare. The room erupted in arguments. Some delegates wanted to dismiss the threat entirely. Others wanted to immediately mobilize Earth's defenses. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the Devourers. Enough, Marcus shouted, standing up so quickly his chair fell over. The room went silent. You want proof? Fine. Zara, show them. Zara had been sitting quietly in the corner, overwhelmed by the political complexity of human decision-making. Now she stood and activated her personal translator device. I am Zara of the Aquari, she said, her musical voice carrying clearly through the room. 6 months ago, I watched the Devourers murder my family. I watched them destroy my homeworld. I watched billions of my people die while their leaders argued about whether the threat was real. She activated a holographic display that showed images from her escape pod's memory banks. The delegates watched in horrified silence as worlds burned, as massive organic ships tore through planetary defenses like they were made of paper. "This is Aquari Prime," Zara said, as a blue-green world appeared on the display. "Population 4 billion. The Devourers arrived at dawn." The image shifted to show the same world hours later, a lifeless husk surrounded by the debris of orbital cities. "This is the Lithan hegemony," she continued, showing crystal cities being reduced to rubble. "Population 12 billion. They lasted 18 hours. More worlds appeared and disappeared. The Chitauri hive worlds, the Valeri energy cities, species after species, civilization after civilization, all reduced to cosmic dust. The refugees you met me with. We are all that remains of 1,000 worlds," Zara said quietly. "And the Devourers are coming here next." The room was completely silent now. Marcus could see the horror and realization dawning on faces around the table. "What do you need from us?" the Secretary General asked finally. Marcus stepped forward. "Time, resources, and the thing humans do better than any species I've met. The ability to organize impossible projects and make them work." Over the next 6 hours, they laid out the plan. Earth's shipyards would work around the clock to retrofit human vessels with Alcubierre drives, modified with refugee technology. The Forerunner installation locations would be investigated by the fastest ships available. Most importantly, Earth would serve as a coordination point for refugee forces scattered across the galaxy. "You're asking us to become the leaders of a galactic resistance movement," Admiral Chen observed. "I'm asking you to do what humans have always done when faced with overwhelming evil," Marcus replied. "Stand up and fight back." General Harrison, who had been the most skeptical, leaned forward. "What makes you think we can succeed where these other species failed?" Marcus smiled. "Because we're human. We landed on the moon with computers less powerful than a modern calculator. We've survived ice ages, world wars, and pandemics, and we've never met a problem we couldn't solve if we put our minds to it. More than that," Zara added, "humans are the first species we've encountered that will fight for strangers. Every other race the Devourers attacked focused only on saving themselves. You're talking about saving everyone." Sarah Chen stood up. "I volunteer to lead the Forerunner site investigation team. And I'll coordinate the refugee contact missions," said Commander Rodriguez from the Mars fleet. One by one, others volunteered for dangerous assignments. Within hours, what had started as a skeptical political meeting had become a planning session for the largest military operation in human history. Marcus watched his species transform before his eyes. The bureaucratic caution was replaced by determined efficiency. Scientists began collaborating on hybrid technologies. Military commanders started planning joint operations with alien refugees they'd never met. Engineers calculated how to retrofit entire fleets in impossible time frames. "This is why we'll win," Marcus said quietly to Zara. "Because you work fast?" she asked. "Because we work together," Marcus corrected. "The Devourers have made one critical mistake. They've never faced a species that considers the entire galaxy worth protecting." As the meeting broke up into working groups, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since this all began: confidence. Humanity had taken on impossible odds before and found a way to win. This time wouldn't be different, but first they had to reach that Forerunner installation. If the ancient technology was as powerful as the star maps suggested, it might be the key to saving not just Earth, but every remaining free world in the galaxy. The countdown had begun. In less than 5 months, the largest fleet of Devourer ships ever assembled would arrive at Earth's doorstep. Marcus intended to be ready for them. 4 months and 3 weeks after the Geneva meeting, Marcus stood on the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's first Forerunner human hybrid battleship. Around him, displays showed the largest fleet ever assembled in human space. Not just Earth vessels, but ships from every refugee species that had answered humanity's call. "Devourer fleet detected at the edge of the system," reported Commander Torres. "Mass readings suggest—" "Jesus, sir, there are hundreds of them." Marcus studied the tactical display. The Devourer force was even larger than their worst estimates. Over 300 organic ships, each one capable of consuming a planet. But they'd had surprises of their own. "Signal all ships," Marcus commanded. Operation Last Stand is a go. What followed was the most complex military operation in galactic history. Human ships equipped with modified Alcubierre drives began jumping in precise patterns around the Devourer fleet. Each jump left no signature the Devourers could track, making the human vessels appear and disappear like ghosts. Refugee Squadron 7, you're clear for your run, Marcus announced. Christor's voice came through the communications array. Understood, human Marcus. The Lithans are ready. The crystalline beings had spent months working with human engineers to create something unprecedented. Living crystal weapons that could adapt to Devourer shielding in real time. As the Lithan ships engaged, their weapons began cutting through the organic hulls of the enemy vessels, like hot knives through butter, but it was Zara who had provided the key insight that made victory possible. The Devourers aren't just ships, she had explained during the planning sessions. They're a hive mind. Each vessel is connected to all the others. If we can disrupt that connection, the plan was audacious even by human standards. While the main fleet engaged the Devourers in what appeared to be a desperate last stand, a small strike force would infiltrate the command ship and plant a virus in the hive mind network. A virus designed by human computer specialists working with Volari energy beings. Marcus watched as Admiral Sarah Chen led her strike team directly into the heart of the enemy formation. The Prometheus was the fastest ship in the fleet, equipped with experimental stealth technology and crewed by volunteers who knew they might not return. Strike team is inside the command ship. Sarah's voice crackled through heavy static. Beginning virus deployment. The Devourer response was immediate and terrifying. The entire enemy fleet seemed to convulse as the hive mind realized what was happening. Organic weapons that had been firing with coordinated precision suddenly began targeting their own ships. It's working, Torres shouted. The virus is spreading through their network. But the Devourers weren't finished. The largest ship in their fleet, a massive creature that looked more grown than built, began to separate from the others. As it moved away from the chaos, its weapons powered up with energy readings that made every sensor on the human ships scream warnings. Planet killer weapon, Marcus realized with horror. They're going to destroy Earth, even if it costs them their entire fleet. That's when the second part of the human plan revealed itself. This is Forerunner. Station Alpha, came a new voice on the communications channel. It was Dr. Elizabeth Okafor, the xenoarchaeologist who had spent months unlocking the secrets of the ancient installation. We have weapons lock on the command ship. The space around Earth suddenly lit up as dormant Forerunner weapons, hidden for millennia throughout the solar system, came online. Beams of pure energy, technology so advanced it seemed like magic, reached across impossible distances to strike the Devourer command ship. But even the Forerunner weapons couldn't destroy the massive vessel quickly enough. The planet killer weapon was charging, and Earth had minutes before it fired. That's when Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, he announced. Implement Protocol Humanity. Protocol Humanity was something they'd hoped never to use, a last resort that embodied everything that made humans unique in the galaxy. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, every human ship in the fleet turned toward the planet killer and accelerated to ramming speed. Sir, you can't be serious, Torres said. We're not abandoning Earth, Marcus said firmly. And we're not letting that thing destroy any more worlds. But before the human ships could sacrifice themselves, something unexpected happened. The refugee ships began moving to intercept them. Human Marcus, Christor's voice came through clearly. The Lithans will not let you fight alone. The Aquari stand with Earth, Thesa announced from her ship. One by one, every refugee species in the fleet declared their intention to join the suicidal charge. Ships that had spent years running from the Devourers now accelerated toward certain death to protect a world that wasn't even their own. Why? Marcus asked, overwhelmed by the gesture. Because you taught us something we had forgotten, Zara's voice came through from the Aquari hope. That some things are worth dying for, and that we don't have to face the darkness alone. The combined fleet struck the Devourer command ship like a wave of righteous fury. Human determination, Aquari courage, Lithan resilience, Volari energy, and Chitauri unity, all focused on a single target. The massive organic vessel, already weakened by Forerunner weapons and internal virus damage, couldn't withstand the assault. As the command ship died, the hive mind network collapsed completely. Across the system, devourer vessels began shutting down or turning on each other as the controlling intelligence fragmented and failed. In the aftermath, as rescue teams searched for survivors and refugees celebrated their first real victory against the devourers, Marcus found himself back aboard the Lucky Strike with Zara. The small mining ship had survived the battle, though it bore new scars from the fighting. "So what happens now?" Zara asked. Marcus looked out at the debris field where the devourer fleet had been. Already, human engineers were working with refugee scientists to study the enemy technology, looking for ways to track down and eliminate the remaining devourer forces throughout the galaxy. "Now we finish what they started," Marcus said. "We find every remaining devourer ship, every slave camp, every conquered world. And we free them all." "That could take years," Zara pointed out. "Then it takes years," Marcus replied. "Humans are patient when we need to be." Zara smiled, that same expression of hope that Marcus had first seen in the medical bay of his ship months ago. "Your species is remarkable, Marcus. You've given the galaxy something it had lost." "What's that?" "Hope," Zara said simply, "and the knowledge that no one has to face evil alone." As Earth began its transformation from a single world into the capital of a galactic alliance, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a simple decision to help a stranger in need. It had ended with humanity taking its place as the protectors of free worlds throughout the galaxy. But perhaps most importantly, it had proven something that Marcus had always believed about his species: that when faced with impossible odds and absolute evil, humans didn't just survive, they found a way to make sure everyone else survived too. That, more than any weapon or technology, was what made humanity special, and it was what would ensure that the galaxy remained free for generations to come. In the distance, the first ships carrying refugees back to liberated worlds were already departing Earth's orbit, escorted by human vessels that would help them rebuild what had been destroyed. The age of the devourers was over. The age of galactic unity had begun, and it had all started with one human who saw someone in need and decided to help.